In this lecture we are going to try to see the market manipulation idea in a more conceptualized form. I believe it's important that we do that before jumping to the practical examples because the conceptual and theoretical comprehension of a complex idea is sometimes easier with metaphors. In this video I am going to use an old philosophical idea that fits perfectly to how market makers relate to the retail traders and to the market as a whole. This old philosophical idea is called the allegory of the cave, which can be found in Plato's Republic. The allegory consists of a few elements that will enable you to see clearly what market manipulations are about. Imagine that we have a cave, and inside this cave we have chained prisoners facing a blank wall. Behind the prisoners we have individuals who walk freely inside the cave carrying objects, and behind these individuals we have a fire. As you can see in the image, the light produced by the fire hits the objects carried by the individuals between the fire and the chained prisoners and form shadows on the blank wall. It's important to see that the blank wall is the only thing that the prisoners can see, so in this case, the wall and the shadows are the prisoners' reality. The shape of the shadows that appear on the blank wall influence directly what the prisoners think. Here is the interesting fact. The shadows and their shape are controlled by the individuals who walk freely inside the cave carrying the objects, and they can purposefully distort the shape of the shadows to make the prisoners think in a specific way. You probably can see where I'm going with this by now. It's scary how perfectly this metaphor fits to the situation between retail traders and market makers. In our little thought experiment here, the prisoners are analogous to the retail traders in the market. The shadows on the blank wall is the price action. By the way, shadows are bidimensional just like the price action is. The individuals carrying the objects between the fire and the wall are the market makers, and their ability to purposefully change the shape of the shadows is analogous to their psychological arsenal in relation to the retail traders. The objects being carried by the individuals who are analogous to the market makers can be considered as the true market. Remember the abstract example of the tridimensional object in the room corner that was used to explain the concept of contextual trading in the fractal flow strategy video course. This idea is the key to understand why subjectivity is a practical necessity in the markets. In some way, the object in the room corner and the allegory of the cave are different ways of telling the same story, but the allegory of the cave has an extra layer of difficulty, which is the ability of the tridimensional objects to change the shape of their shadows with the goal of misleading the person who is trying to figure out what they are. Imagine that one of the individuals who are analogous to the market makers inside the cave are holding up a ruler in front of the fire. The ruler is obviously a tridimensional object, but its shadow on the blank wall is bidimensional of course. If the tridimensional ruler is rotated in front of the fire, its shadow will give the impression that its length is being shortened, but in reality, the tridimensional ruler is just being rotated. This is a subtle example of how market makers perform an act that looks like something obvious on the outside, but in reality, it's something completely different. Another example of how the market makers can try to shift the focus of retail traders is using the example of the cylinder in the room corner again. One of the shadows is a square and the other is a circle. One of the objects that can produce both shadows simultaneously is a cylinder. However, market makers can try to trigger the von Restorff effect by trying to draw the attention of retail traders to one of these shadows by making one of them extremely obvious. By comparing these two metaphorical ideas, we can see that things can start to get pretty complicated in the realm of market manipulations. If you thought that simple contextual trading was challenging, you might be reevaluating that feeling by now because the axis of the market makers moves, which comes mainly from the intersection between those three cognitive biases we studied, adds a whole new complex dimension to the idea of contextual trading. The ultimate goal of this course is that you break the chains that are forcing you to see the shadows of price action. The way to do that is by knowledge of course, which is another point of agreement between the modern trading paradigm and the Plato's allegory of the cave. By acquiring the correct knowledge, you will be able to walk inside the cave and carefully observe what the true market is really like.